There's a woman on my street. I'll call her Carol. Carol is 62. Until last spring, she walked her dog every morning. She called her sister every Sunday. She never missed a workout. Then, almost overnight, she just stopped. Nothing happened to her. Nothing anyone could point to. Today, I'm giving you the 5 real reasons this happens. And reason number 4 is the one almost nobody names. And this is not just Carol's story. This could be any of us. Maybe you have not stopped. Not yet. But maybe you have felt it. A morning where getting up took more convincing than it used to. A version of yourself from 5 years ago that feels a little further away each year. And underneath it, a quiet question nobody says out loud. Is this just what 60 looks like now? Stick with me, because the real answer is not what you think. And by the end, you will know exactly which one of these 5 is happening to you and what to do about it. Reason number 1. The structure that used to run her day is just gone. Carol used to be up at 6, not because she wanted to be, because the job needed her to be. 22 years of an alarm clock deciding her mornings for her. Then one day the job ends, or the kids move out, or the calendar just goes quiet, and nobody warns you what happens next. For Carol, that day came last spring, when she retired after 30 years at the same school. This is not just Carol's story. There is a real name for what she is feeling. Researchers call it psychoprofessional gravitation. It is the idea that the pain of losing a role is not random. It is directly tied to how much of yourself you had built into that role in the first place. The more of her identity Carol had poured into being needed at 6 a.m., the harder 6 a.m. now feels with nowhere to be. But there's relief in that too. It doesn't mean something in her broke. It means she built a self around a structure that was always going to end one day, the way every job and every stage of raising children eventually does. That ache is empty space, not damage. An empty space can be filled on purpose instead of by accident. And that emptiness is only reason number 1. Reason number 4 is the one that surprised me the most, and we are going to get there. Reason number 2. She stops moving without ever deciding to. Not because of illness, because of a life that quietly stopped asking her to leave the house. For years, going out had a reason attached to it. Groceries for a family, a drop-off, a pickup, an errand for somebody else. Once those reasons disappear, some women wait for a new reason to show up on its own. It rarely does. This is not about willpower. It is about how much of her movement was never really a choice to begin with. It was just built into a life that needed things from her. When that life stops needing things, the walking stops too. Quietly, without anyone deciding it. The relief here is simple. If the reason to move was never really a choice, it can be rebuilt the same way, on purpose, in small pieces. A short walk at the same time every day. Not for anyone else, just a reason that is hers again. I want to tell you something about Carol before we go further. The morning she stopped walking her dog, there was one thing sitting on her kitchen table that nobody, not even her daughter, could explain. I'm going to tell you what it was, but not yet. If you want all 5 of these, and you want to know exactly what was on that table, stay with me. Reason number 4 is the one I still think about the most. Reason number 3. The circle around her gets smaller, and most of it was never her choice. A friend moves closer to her grandchildren. another gets sick. One more is simply gone, and the phone that used to ring on Sunday nights just does not ring anymore. I want to say this clearly because it matters. This is not about her failing to keep in touch or not trying hard enough. A major study on loneliness found that 46% of adults said they often felt alone, and 43% said their relationships no longer felt meaningful. Circumstance did that, not character. Some of this is genuinely outside anyone's control, and no amount of positive thinking rewinds a friend moving away or a marriage ending in loss. Something is still inside her control, even when the circumstance is not. Isolation feeds on being invisible. The moment she names it, even just to herself, it starts to loosen. A new connection does not have to replace an old one to matter. It only has to be real. Reason number 4 is coming next, and it might be the one that explains all 3 of these at once. Reason number 4, the one I told you about at the start. She loses a project that belongs to her alone, and it has nothing to do with being needed by anyone else. For years, so much of her time was already spoken for. A job, a family, a house that needed running. There was always a next task waiting, and most of it was for somebody else's benefit. When that slows down, some women expect to feel free. Instead, they feel strangely empty, and they cannot explain why, because on paper, nothing is wrong. It does not only happen to women who had a career like Carol's. I have heard the same thing from a woman who spent 30 years running a household, coordinating 4 kids, a husband's job, a mother-in-law's medical appointments, all of it real, all of it necessary, and every bit of it about somebody else. When the last of that finally slowed down, she did not feel relief either. She felt like she had misplaced something and could not name what it was. The research explains why. Researchers who tracked thousands of adults for years found something specific. People with a clear sense of purpose, something that was theirs, not their job title and not their role in the family, lived longer. Not just felt better, lived longer, even after accounting for their health and their income. Purpose was not a nice bonus on top of a good life. It was structurally part of it. Researchers think it works because purpose gives a reason to keep showing up, even on the hard days, the same way a job did for 30 years, without anyone noticing that was what it was doing. Take the reason away, and the showing up goes with it, quietly. This is Carol's real answer, by the way, and I can finally tell you what was sitting on her kitchen table that morning. It was her old badge from the school. 30 years of walking through those doors, and she still had not been able to put it in a drawer. Not because she missed the job, because she missed being claimed by something every single morning. And nobody had told her that losing that would feel exactly like grief. It was not that Carol lost people. It was that she lost the one thing that was fully only hers. That is what reason number 4 actually is. Unneeded was never the real problem. Unclaimed was. A project that is fully hers does not have to be large. It does not have to look like a second career. For one woman, it was finally learning to weld, badly, in her neighbor's garage. For another, it was writing down her mother's recipes before she forgot the exact measurements. Small, specific, hers. The size of it was never the point. Being fully claimed by it was. And now, reason number 5, the last one, and the one that changes how you see the other 4. Somewhere in her 50s or 60s, a woman notices she is not quite as fast as she used to be. Names take a second longer to land. A crossword that used to take 10 minutes now takes 20. And it is easy, so easy, to read that as proof of decline. Maybe it is not even about memory. Maybe it is the 26-year-old in the meeting who pulls up an answer on her phone before Carol even finishes forming the question. It is easy to walk away from a moment like that, feeling like the world has quietly moved on without you. The research on this surprised me the first time I read it. There are two different kinds of intelligence, and they do not age the same way. One is called fluid intelligence, the raw, fast, figure-it-out-on-the-spot kind of thinking. That one does peak young and slows down over time. That part is true. But there is a second kind called crystallized intelligence. It is wisdom. It is pattern recognition built from decades of living. It is the ability to explain something so clearly that a 19-year-old finally understands it. And that kind of intelligence does not decline after 60. It keeps rising. This is not a new idea dressed up to make aging feel better either. Psychologists have studied fluid and crystallized intelligence since the 1960s, first named by a researcher called Raymond Cattell, and the finding has held up for decades since. It just rarely gets mentioned next to the word aging, because slowing down makes for a scarier headline than getting wiser does. So when a woman in her 60s feels like she is losing a step, she is usually right, and also completely misreading what it means. She has moved on to a different track entirely, one that was never about speed in the first place. Falling behind was never really what this was. She is just getting started on the track she is actually on. Carol found this out by accident. 9 months after she retired, a young teacher at her old school called her, stuck on a student nobody could reach. Carol talked to her for 20 minutes. That teacher told her later it was the most useful conversation of her whole first year teaching. Carol did not put her badge away that week either. She just stopped needing it on the table. You do not need a former student calling you for this to be true of you too. It shows up in smaller places. The friend who calls you first when her marriage is falling apart, not her therapist, you. The niece who asks how you would handle it, not because you are the loudest voice in the family, but because you are the steadiest one. That steadiness was not there at 30. It is crystallized intelligence, working exactly the way it is supposed to. If you are 63 or 58 or anywhere close to that number, and wondering whether this is just what it feels like now, the honest answer is this. Maybe it was reason 1 for you. Maybe it was reason 4. Maybe, if you are honest, it was more than one of these 5. Something is changing, but it is not decline. It is dormancy, and dormancy is not permanent. The 5 things we just talked about are not proof that something in you is breaking. They are proof that the structure you built your first life on has run its course, and there is room now to build the second one on purpose. If this found you today, you are not alone in it, and you are not behind. Subscribe, because next week we are going deeper into exactly how to build that second one. I will see you then.